Sorry folks, bear with me. I have a bit of a cold at the minute, so I may be coughing throughout this. Anyway, I wanted to make a video because I got this comment from Kirby Lizzie Art. Now this is a comment on my video, Non-duality is not a theory. The video that has the icon, which is a bucket where holes have been punched along the bottom and water is pouring out. So you've got the oneness, which is the water in the bucket, which is the true underlying state of the universe or of reality. And the holes symbolize the splitting up of everything into duality, right? Into the multiplicity of form that is space-time, right? But the understanding from the analogy is that even though by all appearances outside the bucket these look like separate objects, these streams of water, they are in fact one, because they are all flowing from a single source, which is just the repository of water. So every one of those streams is the repository of water. You see? Everything is intimately connected with everything. Now bear that in mind when I read this comment. Darrell, I do believe we are all made of stardust, but I have a really hard time feeling I'm one with everybody as I work in customer service, and I feel very different than a lot of people. Do you have any tips or advice? Okay, you encounter quite a bit of non-duality teaching that kind of is on this universal love vibe, that somehow it's your responsibility to love everybody, to never have any negative emotions towards anybody. And yeah, I flirted with that in the beginning, but I outgrew that notion because it's bunk, right? It doesn't make sense. So let me try and illustrate that if I can. If you look at the whole world, you know, the animal kingdom, and we're part of the animal kingdom, right? We are not separate. Everything's killing and eating everything. So there's no non-duality in the sense of this wondrous love anywhere. You know, you show a picture of a forest and it looks very pretty and everything, but within the leaves there's all sorts of creatures scuttling and they're all killing and eating each other to try and survive. That's the nature of the universe on every level, from, I would say, even from subatomic particles, but it's easier to illustrate if we think about microbes in a droplet of water, right? If we start at that level, we could go even smaller, but we start at that level. Microbes at war in a drop of water, right? So there you have the adversarial principle in such a small place. But you've also got it in the sort of macrocosm, if that's the right word, of asteroids flying around, one of which probably is responsible for the dinosaurs dying here on this planet. So there's the adversarial principle there. Go even higher, go to supernovas. Think of the destruction wrought by a supernova. Think of black holes. Think of the ultimate heat death of the universe. Is there anything more destructive than that? I don't think so. So it seems kind of silly to think that, oh, we're this little creature here and we're going to find universal love where we don't want to hurt anything ever under any circumstances, and nothing's going to hurt us and everything's just going to be woo, it's hippie time, you know? That does not work because that's not reality. And yet I hear this quite a bit. You can try and fool yourself into making it work by not engaging with people. I once spoke to somebody who had basically spent a year of his life hiding away in his house and not engaging with anything, just concentrating on meditation. Well, that's no way to understand anything, because you're not engaging with reality. You've just chosen a little comfortable subset of reality which other people don't have the benefit of. I mean, what's a starving African child going to do? You know, it doesn't have a nice comfortable living room with central heating to go into and meditate. You understand? So let's deal with reality. And the reality is that you have all these emotions that are handed to you from your evolutionary heritage. And some of these emotions are to do with how you handle conflict. And they're natural, and they're not things that are supposed to be transcended. Now you can hear a kind of non-duality narrative that goes something like this. Well, if you experience resentment and anger over how you've been treated, you're just trying to kind of that's all happening in reference to a self that does not exist, right? There is no actual self inside the head, what we call the ego. It's not real. Now that's true, it's not real. So why would you need to defend it? Someone hurts your feelings? Why do you want to act in self-defense if there's no self? Yeah? Now that sounds good on the surface, except it just doesn't really work in practice. No matter how much you try to really integrate that understanding, like I never have to defend myself, except maybe defending the body from physical attack, okay, that's different. But we're just talking about the defense of the ego here. I never have to defend myself because there is no ego. You can tell yourself that till the cows come home. You might experience a little bit of success with it. I've tried this. All this is coming from experience, right? I've tried this. I find myself lying in bed, awake at night, because I was so resentful over something that had happened, and I hadn't confronted the person, and I was having a sleepless night. This has happened more than once, and just lying there so angry. And then I try to tell myself that story that there's no self, and it kind of works sometimes and sometimes it doesn't. Now, I don't think personally that I was experiencing a failure to integrate that understanding. I think I was experiencing the very natural emotions that arise through our evolutionary heritage that are not to be demonized, right? There wasn't a fall from grace, remember, that has to be overcome. That's the Christian message. You've always heard me saying, there's nothing wrong with you just as you are. And that's true. So, I have also then experienced when someone mistreats me, turning around and confronting that person. And I have experienced how that allows me to completely clear any sort of emotional problem that I have with that situation. The negative emotion gets correctly directed as your emotions are guiding you to do. It gets correctly directed down that line which says, you will not be treating me that way. I'm not putting up with that. You see? Because your mind does not differentiate between an attack on the mind and an attack on the body. And all creatures are tasked with survival. Right? That's not a dysfunction. That's normal. So it's okay to take it personally if someone gives you a personal attack. Right? Society only functions if there are boundaries in place where behaviors are tailored so that everybody can get along with everybody. And when someone steps out of line, there has to be something that says, hold on a minute, I'm not putting up with that. You see what I mean? And the one thing that I've wrestled with, getting slightly off topic here, but it's all related, the one issue that I've wrestled with a lot is what I'm supposed to think ethically about vengeance. It's the one sort of thing that I've had problems with when I'm thinking about the teaching of Anton LaVey. But I'm starting to understand now that vengeance is just, again, it's just part of that natural emotional makeup that you have. And there's probably a whole video on this. I'll not touch on it too deeply now, but what is justice in terms of the court system and prison and everything? What is that other than state-sanctioned vengeance? Really think about it. I think that's what it is. Nobody wants to abolish justice, do they? But is it any different from vengeance? It's vengeance, except it's not vigilante vengeance. It's the state does it for you. So, getting back to non-duality, how does that all factor into that? Well, yes, we're all one. The whole universe is one. But that doesn't mean the whole universe flows together comfortably in sort of bliss and love. Okay? We just have to observe it and we can see it's not like that. So why would it be like that for us, even when we understand non-duality? It's not, right? It's adversarial, and that's natural. That's not something to be transcended. Now, the difference between dealing with those negative emotions as a person who understands non-duality and dealing with them as a person who doesn't, you know, how I used to be, is that when I didn't understand non-duality, I took it all very, very seriously. You know, a slight on your character is very, very serious. Whereas with non-duality in place, it's not quite so serious. It's not, I mean, thinking about my own future death doesn't fill me with dread, right? I know it's going to happen. I understand that life is kind of a game. You get a certain amount of time to play it. But ultimately, you're the universe. So you're going to be playing it forever, really, just as other lives. And you're playing it as other lives right now, because we're all one. But in that game, the heroes and the villains will clash. And that's just part of the game, right? And it's a great big mess. And that's not supposed to change. That's kind of what I'm getting at. The one teacher I think who really got this right was Alan Watts. How could I mix up those two guys? Alan Watts spoke about this. He talked about the Joker. It's worth, you know, looking him up on YouTube and watching some of his lectures. Dive in deep with Alan Watts. Yeah. So, how does this help you in your situation working in customer service? Okay, this is difficult because I feel for you there. Because you're taught that the customer is always right, that you can't confront the customer. You'd lose your job if you put the customer in their place, no matter how unreasonable the customer is being. It's the reason why I would hate to work in retail, and I don't have a good solution for you, except to say, I don't want to say this publicly. Yeah, maybe find another job, or try to deal with it just by understanding that it's really not that serious. But I know what it's like. I know what it's like to internalize resentments about things. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, this was my third attempt at making this video. I'm not sure which of the three recordings was the best one, but we'll see. I hope you may have found that somewhat helpful. Main point is just be very wary of those teachings that are all about universal love. They're not realistic. Life is much more varied than that. And you don't want to end up dehumanizing yourself by going down that road. Yeah, I should add this actually, because you know, if you really took it seriously, this idea that there is no self and you must live as if there is no self. Well, if you have, say, a son or a daughter and they're doing a sporting event and you're there to watch, you can't cheer for your son or your daughter because that's competition, right? And objectively speaking, according to the cosmos or cosmic consciousness, you know, outside of your personality, cosmically speaking, whether your son or daughter wins or whether some other person's son or daughter wins is immaterial. So surely it's egotistical then to want your child to win. You see what I mean? It's not just negative emotions that you're going to lose down this road. It's all emotions concerned with any form of personal interaction. because you're just going to end up sitting completely disconnected from life and from meaningful relationships. And that's why most non-duality teaching is horrible, right? But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because non-duality, it is the way the universe is, and understanding it that way is still helpful for life, even though you can't have peace and bliss by understanding it. So as usual, I am giving a terrible sales pitch because, as I said in a recent video, I'm only interested in talking about reality, not the fantasy of some superconscious state that fixes everybody's problems. Never gonna happen. Okay, folks. Bye-bye.